Welcome to the Beyond Pain podcast with your host, Joe Gambino and Joe LaVacca. Join the two Joes, two physical therapists, as they discuss how to navigate the uncertainties of pain so you can move beyond it and get back to the activities you love most. This podcast is for Joe, and their guests to share their clinical thoughts and ideas based on their collective clinical experiences. Can this information be for you? Maybe, but we cannot know for sure. Therefore, it is always worth talking to your healthcare provider to make the best decisions in your care before you implement anything on this podcast. And please use common sense.
In this episode of the Beyond Pain podcast, Joe and I introduce ourselves, our backgrounds in physical therapy and fitness, how our philosophies have changed over the course of the last decade, and of course, how we like to take our coffee. We hope you enjoyed this episode and all future episodes of the Beyond Pain podcast. And without further ado, here's today's episode.
I guess this is a welcome in to the first ever episode of the Beyond the Pain podcast. Joe, I almost said finish with Ferris podcast actually, but here we are.
I was actually going to slip and say that this wasn't our first episode of Cups of Joe's, so we're already starting off real high here. I'm excited to be here, man. This has been a long time coming and something we dabbled in before, and we're bigger, we're better, we're smarter. There's nothing that's going to be holding us back this time around.
I don't think so.
And I'm excited to get rolling.
On that note, that's why I was doing those Cups of Joe's YouTube videos we had way back in the past, and something got bigger than, unfortunately.
Oh, I don't know, but I definitely was not. And for those listening,
that's true.
For those listening, some background context. So Joe and I have known each other for quite some time. Joe, what are we going on? 10 years here? Longer than that? Yeah, longer than that. And while we were working together in an old clinic, Perfect Stride Physical Therapy, shout out in New York City, we came up with the idea of sitting down together and just talking about clinical things that came, into our mind over cups of coffee. And we called them Cups of Joe's. And for your viewing delight, they are still available to watch on YouTube. And we're going to keep them up there. And I think in chatting with Joe here, and for clinicians out there who've been around for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, it's really a scary thing to go back and listen to yourself and what you used to think and what you used to say. So that's another reason I'm excited to start the podcast, because I think that my thoughts and feelings I have around PT and patient care are almost constantly evolving now. And I think we probably have social media to thank for that we're just kind of inundated with nonstop information where I can literally have a new way of approaching client care, it seems, almost hourly if I just keep scrolling through Instagram. So what do you think about that, Joe? How are you managing all this Instagram stuff? Because I know you're big on it, man. You're big.
I'm big. I'm bigger than for talking about Instagram. But yes, it is interesting to go back and see some of the old stuff that we talked about, because it is, I wouldn't say scary, but I'm almost like, well, why did I ever think that? Because your the way that your education goes, the way you think. I think it's a sign of progress, a sign of growth. I think if you went back to looking at your old content and you didn't have a progressive view on something, that you're not actually moving in any direction, you're staying at cost. So for us that we're doing now, I would say we're not going to be any better for our clients that we see than we were 13, 14 years ago, which it was because it started exactly 10. So we're going about 14 years to wait.
That is impressive, my friend. So yeah, no, I think you bring up a really good point, because it was I thought it was kind of a little scary, some of the stuff that I was saying, and I think you always sort of know what you know, and I think the questions that I've started asking myself as I've gotten longer into the game of physical therapy is, well, why do I know what I know? how do I know what I know? Who taught me? Who taught my teachers? And kind of coming out with this, idea of like epistemology and all these things that I really want to cover in future podcasts of like the knowledge of knowledge. I think it's really fascinating. And I think it's really kind of helped me as a clinician. And, now sort of the goal here, as we were saying, is to help others in persistent pain with our now, over 20 plus years of experience in the field. But I also hope that, I also hope that this serves as a beacon for, clinicians like us, where we were at, Perfect Stride doing cups of Joes together, rambling on and maybe not having a couple of organized thoughts. So to help people, obviously in pain, move beyond it, hence the whole name of the podcast. But I'd also just love to help clinicians move beyond just their basic reasoning, right? And hopefully we can serve a couple of purposes there, man.
Well, I think this is a perfect segue here. And Joe, well, maybe not Joe, but for the listeners, I think you've learned already that Joe LaVacca here, because we're both Joes, he is the philosopher of the two of us, because I do not think nearly as deeply as he does about some of these things. But the segue is perfect because I want to talk about who we are, intro ourselves to all of you listening, because you may or may not know us at this point. So, Joe, let's start here. Who are you? And don't get too philosophical here. Just
I will not. I will
basics.
keep it real base. Keep it real base. I am Joe LaVacca. I have been a PT for 14 years. I'm a father to a beautiful daughter, Avery Rose. I am also a stepfather to a beautiful girl, Addison Eno. I'm engaged to Dr. Courtney Conley, who is the president and founder of Gate Happens. So I'm currently running offices in New York and Colorado. So I'm going back and forth. More on that in future podcasts. But I think my really experience as a dad, more than anything else over the last 14 years, has probably really shaped the way I approach movement. And I know you being a new dad of just over a year, I'm sure that's had an impact on you. But that's who I am. I enjoy reading and hiking and weightlifting and what else? I'm a Yankee fan. I'm a Giants fan.
Good man on the Yankee fan.
We'll probably have some hardships ahead of us, Joe, that we'll have to cope with, during the course of the baseball, basketball, and football seasons. But yeah, I think that's the sort of, whatever I teach, that's sort of the highlight I give to people. I never want to ramble on about too much more. I think those things will emerge, but yeah, those are the highlights for me.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing, Joe. I did actually learn a couple new things about you on that. So, but as for myself, as Joe said, I am a relatively new father. Olivia is 17 months now at this point. Oh man, I don't even know about myself. I probably have to really think about this. I am married. Jen and I go way back. She was my first girlfriend ever. And then we had parted ways at some point and got back together. And then the rest was history. We've been together now for maybe like 14 years, probably just about the same length that I've known you, Joe.
Wow, yeah, that's right. I didn't know that. I didn't know that you guys were first and true love.
First and last.
I mean, for people looking to be inspired on the podcast, I mean, what else could be more inspirational than that? I will leave my love life history off the docket for now. It is not as inspirational as Joe's first, last, and only. But needless to say, I think we all find ourselves where we're exactly supposed to be. And that's, I think, where I am right now.
Yes. Very nice. I love that. I actually really like that. But back to me, Joe. Back to me stealing my spotlight here. And for me, I mean, I'm a big sports fan as well. Love golf. I'm a Yankee fan as well, so Joe and I will agree on that. Hopefully this season is a good one. I am an unfortunate Chargers fan. It's been a rough last couple seasons. I don't know what's going on this offseason. I don't know, man. Some of these moves, losing Keenan Allen, breaks my heart.
That's tough.
So we will see. Hopefully these changes go a long way for us. And then I am from a basketball perspective, I'm just like a March Madness and NBA playoffs kind of guy. I don't really watch, but I'm a Knicks fan, and wherever LeBron is, I've been enjoying watching his career. So I guess that makes me a Lakers fan as well currently.
Fair deal, brother. Fair deal.
But let's.
Well, I think.
I want to
Well,
switch.
what else? Hold on. I want to spotlight you a little bit more though, because I think that you left off something really important. I mean, obviously we're both PTs, but I think some of the most value that I've taken from you is your career also as a trainer and in fitness and a strength and conditioning coach. And I love the way that field is, our field, I should say, not that field, our field is heading. And, for someone like you, I think we got to spotlight that too, brother, right? All your experience with that. So I don't want that to go undone. And you play golf too. You're quite the golfer.
I do. I'm terrible at it, but I do play golf. But yes, now you're gonna really make me date myself, because I think I started as a personal trainer in 2007, somewhere around there, many moons ago. So it feels like today, and my experience there is what kind of, and actually you're segueing into our next thing, why we got into PT. So I guess I'll take this right into that.
Yeah.
My experience when I was working at a local gym in Astoria, Queens, majority of the people, I don't even know how this became my niche, but I was the guy where people who had injuries were coming out of physical therapy. They were all sent to me. And along that journey, as I was trying to figure things out, I was like, well, there has to be an easier or better way for me to go about these things. And that's what kind of drove me into physical therapy. And then got through physical therapy and almost hated it. Going through my clinical rotations and in network environment was not fun. It was kind of daunting having to see 3-4 people at a time. So then came Perfect Stride and was a one-on-one environment. It was really fun to work in and kind of reframed my love for movement again, because I thought I was actually just going to go back to personal training, honestly. So now I get to put these two things together, which has been really fun. I feel like what I enjoy doing most is not just the rehab portion of things, it's not just the strength side of things, it's blending those two things together and helping people who have been in pain, who have struggled to really push their bodies to regain that confidence, to push their limits a little bit more, and get back to being fit in a way that they want, as opposed to being ruled by pain, so to speak. So
love that, man. I love that. I was thinking about this question of like why I got into PT, and my honest answer for everyone listening is, okay, I had some back pain and blah, blah, blah as a kid. My whole family went to PT. It was the same physical therapy practice out in Staten Island. And the real reason I got into PT, Joe Gambino, is because I love the PT that I was working with. I thought he was super funny. I thought he was super knowledgeable. And here's the other thing. And I'm going to be honest on this podcast, Joe. I'm going to start right now from episode 1.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
I thought this was easy. I thought this was so simple that you just roll in, you barely listen to someone, you just throw people on some heat and ice or some stim. You give everyone the same 3 exercises, can all get better, a little massage, whatever at the end, right? And the other thing that I was captivated by at such a young age, this particular gentleman drove a blue Corvette. He had his own, physician-owned practice, a blue Corvette, humming, right? I mean, you're talking about seeing 30 people a day. I think that guy would see 30 people an hour at one of these mills.
And that's the secret.
Yeah, that's another episode. But yeah, I honestly got into it because I was like, I wanted to do something in healthcare. I thought it was going to be super easy. I was like, wow, look at all this money this guy makes. Like, everyone loves him. And then when I got to school, it was like, wow, this is a lot different. And I would also probably say better than I expected, because I was like, wow, there's more clinical reasoning involved. There's more individuality than I thought. There's more things that I can do with being a PT than I ever imagined. And that even included, teaching and working with teams and working in schools and all this stuff. So Yeah, it was pain that brought me into PT. My family, no stranger to it, but yeah, man, I just thought it was cool and easy. And yeah, luckily, my thought process has changed over the years. But again, we'll get into that as we go. But that was the real reason why I got into it to begin with, and now I'm just into
Yeah.
it with a real fascination of chronic pain. So, which I also never thought I would say 10 years ago.
I actually, I love this story. I knew exactly what you were going to say because we've talked about this in the past. But
It's
I love it, and it kind of ties back into what when we started our conversation today about this kind of like growth mindset and hopefully, right, changing the way you perceive things and as you've grown over a period of time. And that's exactly what their journey was like, right? It's like, well, I want it because it's easy, it can make me some money, and I could drive a blue Corvette, right? And that was Joe's dream then, and it's
yes,
completely morphed into something completely different, and it brings us here to this podcast today, which is really fun. I'm glad that we actually pulled the trigger on doing this because I love you, Joe. I know we've talked
I
about
love
this a
you.
lot,
Yeah,
and I just think that our philosophies have always meshed. And I think this is going to be a really good way for us to take our minds. And actually, what I'm really been interested in is because I know when we were at Perfect Stride together, we've taken the same certifications, we worked alongside each other for such a long time that our brains were very much the same. Like we thought about things very, very similarly. We thought about things. It felt like we were almost identical twins at some point.
yeah.
And now we haven't worked together for such a long period of time. So I'm actually looking forward to talking to you more and more in depth to see how you've changed, how your viewpoints have changed, and how now where both of us have kind of split, how we can now recome together and help people get beyond pain. And that's kind of the next thing I want to talk about is, this podcast was the Fitness for the Fairways podcast. Um, I wanted to get back into podcasting. It was really fun doing it the first time. And it's a little bit of a change or rebrand. It's not that the golf component of thing is going to completely disappear, but this podcast is going to be primarily focused in and around pain and helping you who listen not necessarily overcome it, but be able to process pain better, to understand pain better, and to help build some confidence so you can get back into being the active self that you want. And that's what, I really want this podcast to become and help people overcome that. So whether it's golf, whether it's, you're a CrossFitter, you like weight training, you like running, it doesn't really matter what the mode is at this point, because all these things carry over to anything that you want to do as far as returning to activity, as far as managing pain, as far as bringing down pain and all these concepts in and around it. And I'm just really looking forward to that process and what this can now become.
Yeah. I don't think I could have said it any better. I really appreciate the idea of, learning from each other because having been a solo practitioner for so long, I start, kind of living in an echo chamber, where you hear your own thoughts and you get kind of pulled into this idea, well, this is working for me, so therefore this must work. Now, luckily, I just hired a colleague, Avery Whitcamp, who's been teaching me some things in the field of how to approach neurological problems, and even the way she goes about her assessments I found to be very helpful for me over the last year and how she thinks about things. So yeah, man, I'm excited to learn from you. I'm excited to share stories, real stories, and I think that was one of
Yes.
the big things that I felt was missing and wanting to get into the podcast space too was all these podcasts are wonderful, and we hope that this one is just as wonderful as all the other ones that you guys listen to. But what we want to do is bring on real life people that we've worked with, and how have they navigated the things that you hear about as a clinician, or the things that you hear about as a person struggling with persistent pain and not getting back. Well, what worked for them? And if it worked for them, and if we hear enough stories that we can relate to, well, there's probably something in there for you, for us, to all grow together. So, yeah, I'm excited that Joe allowed me into his platform here. I'm very grateful, and I'm looking forward to the road ahead with everybody. But I think we left off one really big important thing here, Joe, before we close out. It's how do you take your
Ooh,
coffee
what's
these
that?
days?
Oh my goodness, how could we forget that? Well, at home, as a cups of Joe, where there's somehow coffee being built into this whole pain experience that we've put together. I mean, I do love a good cup of coffee. If I'm making it, I am mostly a pour over kind of guy. So I just find that it's one of the best ways I can make it at home. And if I'm doing it at home, I've been finding myself putting a little bit of oat milk in there. That's more of a recent thing. I usually just drink my coffee black. If I'm out, I will drink it black 100%. And I only really get drinks two ways when I'm out. It's either an iced coffee or it's a cappuccino. It's one or the other, and that's it.
Very good. Recently for me, I've also been putting milk in my coffee. I got away from it for a long time. I went, black and pure. I thought that was the coffee life. You needed all the bitterness and everything else until, and I want to shout out trainer Tony here that I used to work with in the gym in Manhattan. I approached him because he owns his own coffee stuff. He was doing it on the side, and I was horrified one day, Joe, that I saw him putting milk in his coffee. And I was like, how could you? Yeah, I was like, how could you, a coffee expert, entrepreneur, businessman, be putting milk in your coffee? And he looked at me and he was like, what are you talking about? He's like, the milk unlocks the flavor, particularly with your light roasts, and it makes it less acid. And he gave me this whole long spiel. And I was like, I know nothing about drinking coffee. So I don't get as fancy with the pour over stuff. I have been, I think, one of the people to gravitating toward iced coffee, no matter what time of the season, how cold it is, splash of milk, and just kind of getting rolling. But yeah, I'm going to go light roast. I'm going to go whole milk now. And whenever I possibly can, I'm going to prefer iced over hot. And that also is relatively new.
That is interesting. The whole coffee milk bringing out some of the flavors of the coffee. I had no idea that existed. But I would say the one reason why I ended up going to like black coffee more often than not is because usually when you go to a place and you tell them to put, I could have a splash of cream in there, which is what I used to do. They put way too much and it ruined the coffee. So like I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna drink it black, and ended up really enjoying it. So just kept the course that way. But I think if I had more control over that stuff, or places where I can just pour it in myself, I'd be more likely to do it, because I don't like a lot of anything in my coffees, because I do, if it's a good cup of coffee, it's, it's enjoyable without the additives, so to speak.
I agree with you. I think the one thing we both agree on is no sugar or sweetener, correct?
Correct. I will never, ever do that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, we're not trying to lose listeners on the episode 1 intro, get to know us, but that's just something that me and Joe do agree on. And hopefully there's lots of things we do agree on and many things we don't. But I promise, Joe, like you said, to always love you, always listen to you, and always hear your thought process as we keep going.
Yes, and that's it, man. And I'm looking forward. The next episode here, we're going to be diving into like what is pain, the actual definition, our definitions. We'll see if we differ a little bit on how we view pain, and maybe even educate pain. I think that'll be kind of fun to go through. And I did want to mention this earlier, but I'm hoping episodes like that. What I've seen a lot of people as they're if they're interested in working with me and I'm talking with them, one of these big obstacles for people to make a decision to hire a coach or even do anything is they don't see a pathway forward to feeling better. It's almost like they've been stuck in a rut with pain for a long period of time. They've tried to do a whole lot of different things, and they really, really struggle to get over the hump, and nothing seems to work for them. And I'm hoping this podcast, and especially these next few episodes that we're going to be doing, starts to help build confidence in somebody's ability to make the decisions if they wanted to go work with someone, but just their bodies in general, because pain, and this is a little teaser, I guess, is not necessarily a bad thing. It's something that you can learn from, and we have to navigate. But there are things, and some pain is okay, and a certain amount of pain is too much. And I think as we start to dive into some of these topics, I'm hoping that it brings out that confidence in people, helps people go, and why the name of the podcast is, beyond pain and being able to get back to what they want to
do. Yep, absolutely. I think that to build on that, if you are in pain, everyone kind of tells me I think they feel alone. And that could not be further from the truth. You are not alone. You don't have to be alone in your journey through it, as Joe was just mentioning. And I think that that's also something to hopefully shed a light on. Return hope, return some of that vision of the future for you guys, and yeah, kind of just create a better relationship with pain and movement.
Love it, Joe. And thank you for everyone who has listened and stayed to the very end of this podcast. Joe, I love you. And if you did stay to the end of this podcast, I also love you.
Yeah, there's no better way I can close that out. Love you guys. Love you too, Joe. See you next time.